Yes. So good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining this online panel. Welcome to Makam AI, AI-generated Turkish music of the Selçuk period. And we are excited to share a unique project that brings together history, architecture, immersive technologies, music, and artificial intelligence. So we will show you, how the ancient Turkish architecture are being reimagined, and not as historical buildings, but as immersive soundscapes. So this work is a collaborative project between the University of Liverpool and our partners in Türkiye. And the name Makam AI or Makam, created by Jacopo, stands for Makam AI. Makam, very briefly, is the traditional system of melodies used in Turkish classical and folk music. So this project augments historical reconstructions by integrating auditory experiences. We are using AI to create musical soundscapes inspired by medieval Anatolian areas along the Silk Road of the past. So as you can see, the research questions, very briefly, we try to explore how and can actually AI compose music that is accurate enough for immersive reconstructions? What kind of text to image, image to music data sets do we need to make this music believable? And how does AI generated music change the virtual experience? So by answering these questions, we hope and expand the digital heritage methods and restore the missing sound of the past, in a way, bringing reconstructions to life with music and atmosphere. Before we begin, I would like to extend a very warm welcome to our panelists and collaborators who made the Makam project possible. So from the University of Liverpool School of Architecture, myself, Guzden, Arjun, Drishya, Madiha, Qaisar, and Shahnaz will be presenting, as you can see in this graph, some parts of our methodologies. And from the Department of Computer Science at the University of Liverpool, we are delighted to welcome Jacopo, who will be presenting the AI music generation part. And joining us from Türkiye, we have Nevin, who will be explaining, who is from Hacettepe University, Ankara State Conservatory, Department of Musicology, and Ezgi and Metehan. Ezgi is from Yildiz Technical University, Faculty of Arts and Design and Department of Music. They will be more playing some of the Turkish musical instruments, now in real time for you. You can consider it as a mini concert of this online panel. And thank you all, of course, for being here today, for your contributions and truly interdisciplinary effort. And we are excited to answer your questions at the end of this session, at the end of this panel, during the Q&A session. So starting from the context, we are working on the Silk Roads. I am sure you have heard about the Silk Roads, but very briefly, the Silk Roads are a network of trade routes connecting east to west, connecting Asia, Middle East, and Europe. And especially very important for Anatolia, for Turkey, during the Selçuk period. So not only the trade routes, they were also channels for cultural exchange, where goods, ideas, art, and music moved between these continents. Along these roads, our focus is a building type called Kervansaray, or in Turkish, Kervansaray. So these are roadside inns, offered shelter and safety for travelers. So these spaces were not just places to rest, but they were hubs for cultural interaction. Before we talk about this, the acoustic simulations and the AI music creation of this project, I just want to share a previous project that is called Silk. Silk stands for Sustainable Information Life Cycle of Kervansaray. It was a collaborative effort with MIT, Professor Takehiko Nagakura, where we combine historical research with technology to preserve and reinterpret Turkey's forgotten architectural heritage. So this project focused on caravansarais, more specifically, actually from 11th to 13th centuries across Anatolia. And these structures were very crucial for the Silk Roads, providing shelters, security, social interactions for traders, travelers, and also under the Selçuk Empire, they became symbols of power, connectivity, and architectural innovations. However, many of these caravansarais have been left neglected, undocumented, and we realized that, like, when we were going through all the resources, there was no reliable unified database. So together with students, teams from Turkey, from UK and US, we compiled, cross-checked and verified fragmented records using satellite imagery, field surveys, and finally we just came with the digital reconstruction through photogrammetry, drone flights, and some immersive 360 experiences. So Silk, in a way, is not a research project. We consider it as a movement to preserve cultural memory through technology, education, and interaction. So through this slide, I would love to thank to our previous team members who worked very hard in the reconstruction of these buildings. Just a second. So very briefly, the modeling phase of this project has started with reconstructing using our architectural skill set from the plan drawings. We started reconstructing in virtual environment these buildings. But for some repetitive parts, we just, for example, arches for arch column connections, we use some parameters using the Rhino Grasshopper plugins. And parameters, for example, about the height, length, curvature, thickness, and all these, different scales are defined and refined in this modeling environment. To enhance the realism, and we integrated photogrammetric models were available. By photogrammetry, I mean using photographs to model these buildings and using some drones and some, photography. We created overall over 40 different buildings along these Silk Roads, and 40 different caravansarais. And of course, through this hybrid workflow, we were able to reconstruct some of the more complicated parts, like the portal or some mukarnas, more about the more complicated parts. But at the same time, for acoustic simulations, we were able to use the solid models that we created through Rhino Grasshopper. So now I will leave the panel to Shahnaz. She will be talking about the acoustic studies and the fieldwork of this project in 2025.
Good evening, everyone. So I just wanted to discuss about the caravanserai mapping that we have done, and we have covered 366 caravanserais as of now. You can see the different colors that represents different locations. So we have categorized it into 5 segments, and then the acoustics of this project focuses on 3 primary caravanserais, which is located near Antalya, and it is considered as a significant port city during the Seljuk period. It was not just logistical hubs, but it had deeper cultural significance that was often quite overlooked. And in spite of all the economic and architectural functions that has been documented, the social and musical spaces still remain underexplored. So, according to scholars like Erdmann and Yavuz, they have classified caravansarais into 4 main classical types, which is open plans, open courtyards, closed central halls, and mixed plans. So the case studies that we are going to cover in this project is Evdirhan, Ensirhan, and Kargihan. These represent different types. So if we talk about Evdirhan, it dates back to the 13th century and measures by 72 by 57 meters. It is the largest of the three, and it has four ions, but it lacks a central main hall. And the walls are actually constructed from reused stone elements. The ceiling height is 6 to 7 meters, and the northern section of the hall is in ruins, but the portal still remains and it is damaged, but it still stands. The Insirhan offers a contrasting layout. It's longer and narrower, which is the second diagram, and it measures 47 by 85 meters, and it includes a central covered hall, which is accessed by a ruined open courtyard. The high ceiling reaches up to 12 meters and gives it a monumental presence. The structure, although it has a central aisle, it also has side aisles along either side, and it supports six bays of vaults. The entrance to the covered hall is adorned with geometric motifs and is typical of the Seljuk decoration. Whereas the Kargihan, it measures a mixed type and it combines an open courtyard which is surrounded by smaller rooms and a covered hall which has a similar width. The courtyard measures 54 by 47 meters and the ceiling height is 7 to 8 meters. The covered section is covered by two naves and eight bays of vaults, which are built from large pitch face stone blocks. The entrance still remains unfinished, and as you can see, all the pictures of the sites, in spite of having, they have survived their original unrestored state, and therefore we were able to do a valuable study on their material and spatial qualities of the Seljuk architecture.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Thanks, Shahnaz. And now Nevin from Türkiye, Department of Musicology.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for this opportunity. To provide a glimpse of the complexity in reconstructing the music of the Selçuk period, I'd like to first give an outsider example and refer to the oldest surviving guitar from a Portuguese luthier of the late 16th century, which with its string structure, frets, and body size doesn't resemble a modern-day guitar at all. Similarly, makam music, with its sound structure, microtones, peculiar melodic progressions, and peculiar instruments, survived to this date in this geography, but the evolution throughout centuries made it almost impossible to trace back to the Selçuk period. It's understandable that we don't have recorded music prior to the late 19th century. But for the secular music of the period, we don't have notated music either. Although religious institutions such as the Byzantine Church had ecclesiastical music notated as early as the 10th century, the earliest example of notated Turkish music dates back only to the 1650s. Music theory sources from earlier periods could be found. An example from the 13th century you can see on the slide, but they didn't provide detailed information about how the music was performed. Indeed, the concept of makam itself emerged in later periods, and theoretical explanations of melodic progression emerged as late as the 18th century. Songbooks, güfte mecmuaları, helped conserve the lyrics, but they didn't provide enough information about the music itself either. Various historical sources include narratives about imperial ceremonies and the entertainment life in the caravanserais. And the Sufi ceremonies, especially those of the Mevlevi whirling dervishes, were well documented. But since actual music from that period hasn't survived, we need to reconstruct the music from scratch. Throughout the narratives, we see that some instruments were completely forgotten, while others evolved into a wider sound register and standardized tuning, fret structure, timbre, etc. In that sense, we try to combine our imagination via the modern-day understanding of makam, examples of attempts of historically informed performance in the domain of Turkish music, such as the works of Fikret Karakaya, explanations of melodic progression from later periods in theoretical sources, and composition snippets.
Okay. Thanks, Nevin. Ezgi from Department of Music, Yildiz Technical University.
Hello, everyone. Nevin, can you help me about translation?
Sure.
Thank you. Bu projede öncelikle bulunduğum için çok mutluyum. Bu projenin sample örnek üretme kısmında yer aldık.
Buraya kadar bir çevireyim. Thank you for having me as part of this project. In this project, I worked as creating the music samples.
İlk önce araştırdığımda senin de söylediğin gibi Nevin, elimizde bulunan kaynakların kısıtlı olması aynı zamanda hem ustadan çırak, usta çırak ilişkisiyle aktarım ve az bulunan yazılı kaynaklar üzerinden en temel ve uygulandığını düşündüğümüz bilgilere ulaştık.
Because of the scarcity of written sources, we tried to imagine how the music was practiced and passed through masters to students.
İlk çalışmamızda VR için yaptığımız bazı sample'lar vardı. Burada kullandığımız enstrümanlar telli, nefesli, yaylı olarak gruplandırılmıştı. Sonrasında yaptığımız çalışmalarda ise tamamen yapay zekaya örnek olarak sunduğumuz çalışmalarda Safiyettin Urmevi'nin de dörtlü ve beşlileri anlattığı kısımlara dayanarak oradaki dizilerin en basit haliyle ve o seçtiğimiz enstrümanla örneğin ud, bunlar üzerinde en organik ve sade şekilde yaptığımız doğaçlamalarla oldu.
For the VR part of the project, we first recorded sound samples with the instruments we had at hand. And for the AI music generation, we focusing on the explanations, the theoretical explanations of tetrachords and pentachords in Al-Urmavi's work. We tried to create sound samples improvised on aerophones, chordophones, and stringed instruments with its most organic and most contemporaneously understandable style.
Bunun içinde bu enstrümanlarda ustalaşmış isimleri bularak bunları kayıt altına aldık. İlk bu VR sample'larından sonra canlı olarak kaydettiğimiz enstrümanlar ud, kopuz ve bağlama oldu. Bugün ise bu enstrümanlardan udu icra edecek olan Metehan Köseoğlu bizle ve size bir canlı olarak Uşak makamında ve yine Safiyettin Urmevi'nin dörtlü ve beşlileri üzerinde o dönemin icra stiline uygun süslemelerin daha sade olduğu bir stilde en yakın şekilde bir doğaçlama örneği sunacak.
So for the VR, we recorded samples from ud, kopuz, and bağlama. And today, our colleague Madiha Köseoğlu will perform an improvisation in Makam Uşak in line with the explanations of Safiyettin Urmevi's tetrachords and pentachords with as little ornamentation as possible in an attempt to recreate how the music was performed during the Selçuk period. So we are now listening to Metehan Köseoğlu's performance.
Son olarak belki ilerideki yine bizim çalışmalarımız ve kervansaraylarla ilgili bu süslemelerin ve o dönemdeki yapılan kervansaraylar içerisindeki müzikle şu anki geleneksel Türk müziği arasındaki farklılıkları üzerine sorularınız olursa ya da bununla ilgili başka tartışma konuları üzerinde de çalışmaya hazırız.
If you have any questions regarding the differences between the modern day interpretations of makams and the possible interpretations back in the Selçuk period, we are happy to answer your questions and happy to collaborate.
Teşekkür ediyoruz. Also, thank you for Meta. And today we have bağlama and deaf also, but no player, but we try a little bit for the sound. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Devam edeyim mi?
Teşekkür ederiz.
Çok teşekkürler Ezgi ve Metehan. If you don't mind, I will just give you a very brief, we covered oud, Metehan covered. So this is ney. And this is kopuz. Together with ney. If I'm wrong, please correct me, Nevin or Ezgi. And this is tar, right? Oops.
So the last one was kopuz actually.
Yeah, kopuz. Yeah, that's what I realized actually. The one the third one, third image that I played was together with ney, but the last one was kopuz. Yes. So now from all this historical background, the music pieces and everything, Jacopo will tell us about the AI generation, AI music creation.
Thank you, Guzden. Thank you, everyone, for having me. So, as we all know, generative AI is rapidly transforming our digital world. So we go to the next slide. Okay, yes. So, as you're all aware, we've seen image generation system, video generation system, text generation system, all sorts of generative AI covering a broad space of multimedia content today. So the question is, how do generative AI perform in music generation, and particularly for generating MAK music from this particular period? So if we go to the next slide, you will see an example. So this is stable audio, and this is state-of-the-art music.
Sorry about your call.
Use one? Yes. So that's basically music generated by a text-to-audio AI, in particular stable audio, which is a state-of-the-art system for music generation from Stability AI. As you can see from this example, so starting from simple prompts, the music that the systems can generate has specific properties that we kind of relate to the bias of the model in imagining what this music may look like. So, Guzden, if you want to play some of the samples. And here you see also the limitation of this model. So this in particular is a state-of-the-art system that can generate up to 3 minutes of music, which is quite a lot for this field. But at the same time, they lack the ability to generate music which in the long term makes sense, so that has structural coherence. And as you will be able to see from other samples, there are issues related to the tonal properties and the timbre of the instrument. Yes. So that's basically everything that AI can do. But then someone may think, so probably this is a more complex problem, right? So how can we integrate additional information about the music in order to see if a model is really capable of generating music for this period? So if we go to the next slide, we did a simple exercise with prompt engineering. So for those of you who are not aware with prompt engineering, so this is a technique in which you try different prompts. So you try to include more information in order to guide the model to generate outputs that is more similar to your expectation. So if you go to the next slide, please, you will see some example of this prompt. So the prompt is becoming more and more complex, more and more informative. And the question behind is, does a model with additional information about this type of music with respect to the properties that it would expect from this music generate something which is more realistic with respect to our expectations? So we try with these 3 different prompts, which are more complex, more informative than the previous one, and we went back to the model and generate some audio samples. So we can start with the first one, for example. Again, similar behavior with a model that gets stuck into a specific pattern, like a short time pattern. And then, yeah, we have this one which takes a little bit of time to build up. Okay. So as you can notice, like the music often loses coherence after a few seconds or gets stuck into like a short pattern. There are noticeable artifacts like noise, imprecise tonal qualities. The timbre of the instrument doesn't really quite match what we would expect. But the core issue is clear. Even if we try to provide additional information into the model, there is no current large knows about MAK music from this particular period. And this links back to what Nevin was saying. So we have very, very little information about this music. And the only audio samples that kind of provide evidence of this music come from the reconstructions made by artists, which is a very, very, very small percentage of the data that models can grasp from the web. So this brings us to the requirements of our system, which we can see in the next slide, with respect to the 3 core challenges. So first of all, achieving historical and cultural plausibility. So the near total absence of notated scores or recording from this particular period is the main challenge. And to train a machine learning models to generate data with a certain level of fidelity, we need a lot of data. Or at least a repertoire of compositions of music that can be used to fine-tune the model. So the goal isn't to perfectly replicate what's lost, which is probably impossible, but the goal is to generate music that aligns with descriptive historical accounts, the oral tradition. So basically the tangible knowledge about something which is intangible. The second challenging is ensuring the contextual richness and relevance. So music was part of specific environments and social settings, like the bustling caravanserais along the Silk Road. So we need to integrate these cultural features and presumes social activities in order to inform the creation of soundscapes, which are contextual with respect to the places in which this system, this music is expected to be played. And finally, the final challenge is delivering an immersive acoustic experience. So it's not just what the music was played, but how it would have sounded within the unique acoustic properties of these historical spaces, which is going to be covered in the next presentation. So this brings us to the first step, which is how do we address the data gap? So we need, first of all, to create data, but create data that can be used to fine-tune models rather than training models from scratch. So the first challenge is the creation of the MAKAM dataset, which is a dataset of audio-text pairs, where the text is a caption of the audio. So it's a description of the musical properties that would allow potentially a model to generate the audio back from the caption. So we go from text to audio after assembling this dataset. So next slide, please. Yeah, so essentially we create the data and then we use the data to reconstruct the audio from the text. That's the main challenge. So this is an overview of the system that we have conceptualized and that we are developing. So we want to reuse this information about these musical reconstructions, so this musical speculation of the music of that period. And the idea is to use large language models to extend these captions. So we have a repertoire of music and text sample, for example, and this is like 50 samples, 50 records, and we're going to extend the captions in order to have accurate recollections of what essentially a piece of music may sound like. And we do this through expert feedback. So we extend the captions, we extend this description, but at the same time, we have expert feedback in order to validate whether a caption is plausible or not. And this is addressing the data gap. At the same time, as you can see from the bottom, we try to address the cultural context. So we try to generate music which is contextual, which is situational with respect to the experience, to the VR experience. So we want to reuse the acoustic properties and the architectural properties of the places, and also information about how these places were used and how the spaces within these places were used for music creation. So this means that we have information like geographical information, we have information about the acoustic properties and the architectural properties of the areas which correspond to node. So you can think of a node as a portal, as an entry point to the VR experience. And since the soundscape should be able to cover the whole experience, so moving from one node to the other, we need to generate a piece of music which is coherent. So it's a collection of pieces trying to simulate the music in specific areas, in specific parts of the caravanserais. And that's how we essentially extend the caption with the cultural context. And we pass all this information to a text-to-music model, which is an open model compared to the one that we were showing before, to generate the audio. So a set of audio clips that we can then put together and send through a convolution process that will be covered in the next presentation to position this audio contextually within the architectural space. So the next slide presents the evaluation protocol. So the challenge here is to create reconstructions that are plausible with respect to the specific properties. So we will conduct an evaluation, expert evaluation with the musicologist, in order to assess the specific properties. And this is a systematic process which is in line with the literature in music generation. And to conclude, in the next slide, we just wanted to remark that these are the main challenges. Again, even if we have a system that can generate plausible reconstruction, we are still dealing with systems, music generation systems, that have inherent challenges as well. For example, most music models have a strong bias towards Western music. So the music that the system generates will still be biased to some extent towards the vast majority of data on which the music was trained on, which is Western music. At the same time, we are aware of the responsible reuse of music AI in this particular case. So we don't want to propagate stereotypes, because these models, once they are out, they can generate hundreds and hundreds of compositions. So we don't want to pollute the space of the speculation. So, but that's why we are doing it in a way to bring something back from the past, rather than proposing something that can generate music that has specific properties for commercial purposes. So we are well aware of the ethical and the responsible implication of the systems. And that concludes my presentation. Thank you again.
Thanks, Jacopo. Fantastic. So to the next step, Drishya and Madiha will be explaining the acoustic simulations from these 3 caravanserais.
Hello, everyone. The next slide, please. Building on the music creation process, the next step was understanding how it would have sounded within the architectural spaces of the Seljuk era. To understand the acoustic character of the caravanserais, we began with an on-site impulse response recording using the balloon burst method. This technique is a practical and efficient way to generate a sharp broadband sound that closely approximates an acoustic impulse. When a balloon pops, it creates an omnidirectional impulse that reflects on surfaces like walls, ceilings, and floors. These reflections reveal how sound behaves in the space. We recorded these bursts using a Zoom H2N portable recorder, which was set at an ear height of approximately around 1.5 meters, and the recordings were made in high-resolution WAV format. At each site, the recorder was placed at multiple distances of 2, 4, and 8 meters from the sound source to analyze how sound decays over space. And we made sure to choose caravanserais that had unique setups. Like at Evderhan, we focused on the courtyard and semi-closed rooms, while at Engerhan, recordings were centered at vaulted spaces, capturing the reflection of sound around the arches and niches. On the other hand, Kagehan offered the most spatial variety, so we recorded in multiple zones, including enclosed and open spaces. To ensure data quality, recordings were done during quiet periods with environmental conditions like wind and ambient noise being documented. We also carried out at least 2 bursts at each location to maintain consistency. The balloon burst method worked especially well for these heritage sites, as it's safe, simple, and doesn't disturb the structure, but still gave us highly usable data for acoustic analysis and oralization. Next slide, please. Once we had our field recordings, the next step was to extract and prepare the impulse responses for our acoustic use. This process began from a pre-processing stage where we trimmed the audio recording in Audacity to isolate the balloon burst and its decay. Once we had cleaned the recordings, we brought them into Room EQ Wizard or REW for IR extraction. And this helped us visualize the impulse responses. The IR graphs allowed us to identify the basic acoustic properties of each space, especially the overall decay shape and onset reflections and the tail length. The graph allowed us to visually access how different spatial conditions influence the response. Like the vaulted and closed spaces showed longer, more sustained decay curves, while open courtyards had sharp, quick drop-off, which indicated faster sound dissipation. These visual insights gave us reliable understanding of acoustics in each zone. After the analysis, we used the extracted IRs to shape music through convolution. In simple terms, we use the dry musical recordings and apply the impulse response to them using a plugin called mConvolution Easy in Audacity. This process transformed the music, making it sound as if it had been performed live inside the caravanserai. The result was music embedded with spatial realism, music that didn't just echo the instruments of the past, but echoed within the physical space where those sounds might once have been heard. Next slide, please. Listening to the convolute music revealed clear acoustic signatures tied to architectural form of each caravanserai. Vaulted spaces like the main hall of Engerhan produced long resident reverberations that gave atmospheric quality. In contrast, the open courtyards of Evder and Kargihan offered quick sound decay, resulting in a sharper, drier sound. This kind of acoustic realism adds depth
to historical reconstructions. It reminded us that architecture isn't just visual, it's experiential. The way a space sounds affects how we understand and relate to it. And through this process, we weren't just simulating sound, we were reviving the sonic dimension of cultural memory. With the field-based impulse responses providing a real-world reference for how these spaces have acoustically behaved, the next step was to explore how well digital models could simulate the same conditions.
Hello, everyone. So the data collected on the field helped us move to the next step, which is acoustic simulation. Understanding how sound once moved through ancient spaces isn't just a technical challenge. It's a chance to rediscover the sensory dimensions of heritage architecture. So this project set out to digitally reconstruct the acoustic environments of Seljuk era caravanserais using simulations tools that merge parametric design with oral analysis. So the simulation environment was built in Rhino 7, chosen specifically for its compatibility with the Pachyderm acoustic simulation plugin. This decision ensured the stability needed for accurate modeling, and the workflow itself was implemented in Grasshopper and divided into two major components. The first generated the parametric geometries of each caravanserai, and the second executed the acoustic simulation logic. Since Pachyderm operates using ray tracing and image source algorithms, it requires fully enclosed geometries to function correctly. Therefore, all courtyard spaces were digitally sealed, an important step to make these simulations possible while still maintaining architectural integrity. Acoustic properties were further refined by assigning material absorption coefficients and ambient temperature values based on field observations. Within the digital environment, sound sources and receivers were positioned in realistic locations to simulate authentic auditory conditions, typically using 5 by 6 by 3 meters test setup. And to visualize how sound energy dispersed through these architectural forms, pufferfish components were added to the workflow. These produce dynamic color gradients with warm tones marking early reflections and cool tones showing the later ones, which is represented in this video right here. And the key performance indicators from these simulations were RT60, representing the reverberation time. These values would later serve as the basis for spatial analysis and comparative evaluation across sites. And the next was the simulations generated quantitative reverberation data, allowing the team to explore how different spatial typologies affect acoustic performances. Moving to the next slide. The RT60 values were calculated across zones such as vaulted interiors, open courtyards, and semi-enclosed rooms. Distinct differences emerged. For instance, the vaulted interior of Incirhan revealed a prolonged RT60 due to its soaring ceiling and hard surfaces. Meanwhile, the open courtyard of Evdirhan demonstrated a rapid acoustic decay as sound dispersed quickly into the open air. These results confirm the powerful role that spatial configuration and materials play in shaping sound. What made this workflow truly effective was its visual feedback system. Using Grasshopper, sound rays were mapped in real time, visually coded to represent energy loss and directionality and reflection patterns. This not only enhanced the analytical depth of the project, but also made the results intuitive and accessible. The findings illustrated that acoustics were not incidental in historical architecture. These buildings were experienced through sound as much as through sight. Each one carried a unique sonic identity, deeply tied to its form and function. Of course, the process wasn't without limitations, and Pachyderm does not support a WAV input, so auralization had to be performed externally using convolution methods. Additionally, Grasshopper lacks built-in signal processing capabilities, and the Rhino interface limited some user control over source-receiver definitions. Despite these challenges, the simulation successfully reconstructed the auditory essence of spaces that haven't been heard for centuries. And by combining parametric modeling, acoustic simulation, and visual scripting, the project revealed how digital tools can preserve not just the look, but the feel and sound of architectural heritage. And perhaps that's the most valuable takeaway, that heritage isn't just what we see. It's what we would have heard and felt. Through this simulation, the process offers a new dimension of memory, one that resonates through time.
Fantastic. Thanks, Drishya and Madiha. So Arjun and Qaisar, about the final stage, you know, the historical reconstructions of the buildings, the music samples, and they will be explaining the workflow of their part.
So next slide, please. Yeah. So I'd like to walk you through how we created the VR heritage experience using the game engine called Unity. So we are focusing on the scene development, the sound design, and the platform's capabilities. So we began by importing the 3D models into Unity, and these 3D models were the photogrammetric model. So we placed them into the scene and then trying to reconstruct the historic spaces as accurately as possible. And we added interactive hotspots that give the users information as they explore, making the experience both engaging and educational. And the movement is handled through the teleportation using the Unity XR interaction toolkit, which helps the navigation smooth and user-friendly. So next comes the sound design, which is the key to immersiveness. So we use the impulse response data, which was done by Madiha and Drishya, and the convolution reverb to simulate realistic acoustics. So like how the sound would bounce in a stone hallway or echo in a courtyard. The examples are shown in the next slide. And then Unity will give us the flexibility with the real-time rendering and also the cross-platform support, and also with the wide range of plugins. It's a powerful tool which will bring the history to life through technology.
Can we go a bit back to the beginning of the slide?
To this one, Qaisar.
Yes, to the beginning of this. Okay. Yeah, the next one. Yes. So to implement interactivity in VR, a module was created. So this module would carry the sound and pictures. So the components of this module are as follows. The first one, next, yeah. The first one is the canvas, which is a plane where images could be displayed. So these images could be historical photographs or site plans. So basically, these are information panels which the player can look at. So the next component is the teleporter, which allows the player to move around the site with ease. So all the player has to do is aim the controller towards the teleporter, and as soon as the player lets go of the button, they teleport to that location. So yeah, the next one is the triggered colliders. So these are invisible bounding boxes which surround the teleporter. So these just detect if the player is present on the teleporter or not. So as soon as they detect the player's presence on the teleporter, the canvas would be triggered to show the image, as well as the music would start playing. Next. So the next component is the snap volume. So this is also an invisible bounding box, but the purpose is completely different. So this acts like a magnet for the player's array. So when the player holds down the controller and aims through the aims the ray towards the teleporter, this snap volume attracts the ray so that it's easy for the player to aim towards the teleporter. And the last one is the ambisonic sound, which is a pre-rendered audio, which is triggered as soon as the player teleports to that location. Next picture, please. Yeah, so as you can see here, there are two concentric spheres around the teleporter. So the smaller sphere, when the player's inside the smaller sphere, the sound is at the maximum volume. And as the player moves out of the smaller sphere towards the larger sphere, the sound attenuates from, say, 100 all the way to 0. And when the player's outside the larger sphere, they cannot hear the sound. So in the next slide, we have a gameplay which you can look at. Pause, please. Pause. So what you just saw was the player aiming through the controller towards the teleporter and teleporting to the location. And as soon as the player teleports there, the information panel popped up as well as the music began playing. Continue. Pause. So now we'll move a bit forward in the gameplay. So here you will be able to notice the sound differences at two different locations. Play. So what you just observed was the same audio playing at two different locations, showcasing how the audio would actually reverberate at the site. So that's how the ambisonic sound as well as the information panels were implemented in the VR game in Unity. Next.
Okay, fantastic, Arjun and Qaisar.
I think there's one more slide.
Yes.
It's about the yeah.
The next one.
Yeah.
The next slide.
Yes.
So in this slide, I'll be talking about the future of VR in heritage, and so it isn't just about the building virtual spaces. It's about making them easier and more meaningful to explore. So we designed simple controls and smart systems so that react naturally to users, making the experience feel smooth and intuitive. We are also managing the time taken for each session, as the prolonged use of the beer will lead to headaches and nausea. And on the right side, we can see the pyramid showing how Unity can support in multiple places such as education and then virtual tourism, where a person can experience the travel uh, right while sitting at home. And also, HBIM and digital twins will be very helpful so that we can preserve and rebuild it together. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thanks. Thanks, Arjun and Qaisar. While we are coming to the end of our, panel, we will switch to Q&A sessions. But in case, we don't have time to answer all the questions, this is our team and the emails. Please, do not hesitate to email us. And from this project that is supported by School of the Arts, University of Liverpool Research Development Initiative Fund, we are now working on one conference paper in EKD in Ankara in 2025, and also a book chapter in the AI enhanced architectural design that we hope to publish these in the next months. And also, if you want to follow the previous stages of the project or the current stages, we are on Instagram, on YouTube, and also on Sketchfab for the models as Silk Kervansaray, and you can find us everywhere. So while I'm stopping the screen share and seeing the whole screen and everyone, so do you have any questions? I can see that we have some participants from Turkey as well. Cenk Hoca, if I'm not wrong, he already did some. Daniel from MIT. Please do not hesitate us the questions. We have another 10 minutes to be with you to answer your questions.
Congratulations. Very interesting. Thank you very much for all your efforts. In fact, I don't have a question because I could not be able to see the theoretical details behind the AI algorithm. So if I can maybe see them or can have some details, maybe I can have some ideas about how to create such algorithms, because it is really hard to connect these theoretical details to real music scene. So it is a bit hard problem, but it has some ways. But we should follow the instruments with the characteristics of that era first. So we should use them, and using some contemporary instruments will bring us a different soundscape from that intervals. So it will maybe can lead us to miss something within the theory of that era. And also, in fact, we know how these makam types create their melodies, at least at 15th century. We know them, and we do not only know the scales, but we know how these scales are transformed into melodies. But the missing thing is we don't have the repertoire. At least we don't have it. We don't have the melodies written, but we have the repertoire. In fact, in some kind of manuscripts, including the lyrics of the songs, including the rhythmic characteristics of the songs, including the makam characteristics of the song. And we know, for example, we can trace a 15th century song from such manuscripts. We can know which makam it is built upon, and we can see the rhythmic structure behind that, and we can just trace how this makam is placed according to the form that is being written on that song. For example, if it is something like a peshrev, we can just foresee how the makam characteristics is placed on different parts of this peshrev. So we know, in fact, many things. We should use that details to trace a bit back. We have the notations at 17th century, but we know also that some of these melodies are coming from the 16th century. We can just historically trace some of the melodies. And for example, there is a melody in Aliufki related to this pirates of Mediterranean, and we know one of the pirates there, Murat Reis. And there is a song dedicated to this Murat Reis. I believe it is one of the oldest one that we can have the notation. It is dated to 1578, for example, whatever. And also Nevin had told something about that. The Byzantine manuscripts has some notations coming from the 16th century again. If I'm not wrong, in Kyriakos Kalasidis' work, there is a folk song dated back to 1524, something like. So we have, in fact, many things on 15th century, but the first step should be to take this material back to 15th century based on the theory manuscripts, based on the lyrics manuscripts, and based on the instruments at that time. We know how to tune the instruments, and we know how the intervals are being heard at that time. So we should use this material to try to figure out how the music can be interpreted at that time. So I assess your work as a very interesting approach to this era. But if we can combine all the knowledge problem, I think you can have a very interesting and very clear way to follow starting from the 15th century. Once we can observe something from the 15th century, then we can try to take it a bit back, trace a bit back too. But first step should be this 15th century thing, because we have the most well-known details from this era. The older places are not so obvious, at least for Anatolian scene. But we have some materials, of course, from the surrounding geographies. But we should, I think, first start with the 15th century scene. So that is what I dreamed based on your works. But thank you very much for this nice effort.
Thanks, Cenk Hocam. Nevin or Jacopo, do you have any comments on these suggestions?
Thank you for the suggestion, Cenk Hocam. We need to feed the AI further because we needed to focus on the VR part of the project a bit more during this phase. Maybe in the further research projects, we could integrate more from the 15th century sources and feed AI with more theoretical data so that we can reach better conclusions, let's say.
Of course. It never finishes. The more data we have, the better results we achieve. So that is how AI works.
I mean, it's a very interesting point, and I think we can even have an entire project on that. Like, it's extremely complex, as you mentioned. Like, there's like so many dimensions involved, like the lyrics, the rhythm, the melody.
Yes.
And then also the even the timbral properties of this instrument. So that's why I think when we were discussing this originally in the project, we say, okay, we have two ways here. Either we go audio or we go symbolic. If we go symbolic, then we need to have a lot of data. And we did find some data sets of MAK music from probably the, here, I'm a computer scientist, so apology for any
No problem.
sounds weird from a musical perspective, but I think it was referring to the period you mentioned. But then you work at the level of the data with very simple melodies, which is, I think, is a great starting point. What I think is challenging is then going from there backward in time, because that's kind of different ways of knowledge. So the way these machine learning algorithms work is they're all data driven. So it's a black box, input and output, without any prior knowledge embedded into rules or intervals, specific properties. So I think that will probably necessitate a hybrid approach in which not only you can feed the data to go back in time to that specific period, but then to go even travel back in time more than that. Then we would have to inject some different type of knowledge, which we don't have in the data, but we will have in terms of rules and properties. So I think that's, it's a project is extremely fascinating, and it would be ideal to focus on something on this. I mean, probably the priority, as Nevin was mentioning, is like trying to reach like a proof of concept that this can be done. And that's why we started with the audio, with all the limitation that we were discussing on the knowledge. And so that's, absolutely great pointers to further investigate that in a more systematic way with respect to the musical knowledge, rather than feeding just a bunch of data to an AI.
Yes.
Thank you, Jacopo. Thank you.
Yes. Daniel, your mic is off.
Sorry.
So no, sorry, Daniel.
Yes,
Your mic is off. No, Cenk Hocam, not you. Daniel is talking, but DT.
Maybe
Yes.
she.
Can I say something?
Okay.
Yes, Daniel, go ahead.
Thank you. Daniel Tsai, MIT, Design and Computation. Thank you for your questions. Just a few quick comments, no, probably without answers, but I thought that the operative question for the music AI generation is how much data? How much data do you need generate something, right? I mean, is it an hour? Is it 500,000 hours? Is it, so once one determines how much data is the minimal set of data that one can use to authentically, reproduce something from that period, that would be important. The thing about the repetitive pieces seems to make sense, complete sense, because the window in which the quote next computation, my next node, next phase, might be so sort of period, it doesn't out because it doesn't remember what's before that period. So that sort of makes sense, that but playing with those type of parameters might be able to, oh, okay, so I only repeat this riff 3 seconds and then I pop out to something else, whereas the system might be seeing only a very small window, and once it gets into that, it's going to continue on. So that sort of makes natural sense that the music like that. But I think that as far as the music is, starting with instruments and playing small riffs, even if they're not complete pieces, makes complete sense to record and ask the question, how much of these pieces makes enough data. But I think that the whole project, going from just physical representation to a sound analysis in something is breathtaking. I mean, I think it's amazing to see. And as far as the sound analysis, I was thinking, well, how does it compare to, let's say, similar sites, similar shaped, different wall treatments or things that are finished or not in a state of semi-completion or ruin, so that okay, well, this space is an analysis with the bare stone. This is a space with wood beams on top. This is a space with, and so on. So that, and to see whether there's a comparative space. So this space in this place that you're analyzing is similar to some existing place that might be in better shape, maybe not, but it would be interesting. But and then finally, I think that the idea of experiencing a historical place in both sound and sight is an amazingly interesting, positive goal for your work. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Daniel. Thanks. I think the materiality of these spaces that we examined can be really the next stage in our project. We know that we have some data about for example, the walls, but we do know that we cannot really replicate the original floor from that era. And of course, it changes the acoustic, simulations that we are actually working in the site. Yeah, very good point. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Okay, if no more questions, I would love to thank to all the participants, to all the panelists, and hopefully in the next stages, our proof of concept project is gonna grow, and we are gonna have much more products in the future. Thanks a lot for joining, and enjoy your evening. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much.